Hello, everybody. This is Drew from Movie Mortis, and today I'm gonna be talking about the 1996 slasher film Scream. Now, to be honest, Scream 7 is gonna come out in a few weeks, and to be honest, it looks like the exact kind of formulaic slop that horror sequel slop that the Scream series used to make fun of. So, you know what? Now might be the best time ever to talk about the original Scream. Yes, the original Scream from 1996, the best one in my opinion. Directed by Wes Craven and written by Kevin Williamson, and starring it has a star-studded cast, which I'll get to in a few minutes. But the first thing I do want to talk about is I feel like it is important to disclose my sort of bias towards Scream because this was actually for me. It's like this was the movie that really like cemented my love of horror and was like, okay, this is why I want to, you know, get into horror. So a little bit of backstory about me and how I got into horror. I wasn't super into horror growing up, outside of like watching like cartoons like Scooby Doo or Courage the Cowardly Dog, stuff like that. I had a very, very casual interest in horror. And when I started studying film, as I got closer to going to college, the first real like horror movie I saw was the original Psycho in film class, like way back in several years ago. And the movie actually put me off of watching horror movies because I actually got scared because like I never watched horror movies growing up, and so it's like I kind of you know I didn't really seek out any horror movies. That was until in 2020 during the pandemic, I got into a heavy metal band called Ice Nine Kills. You might imagine and you might notice I'm wearing the shirt. Actually, I'm wearing it's a shirt based on the Scream. They have a song called "Your Number's Up." It's about the original Scream. But anyways, so I listened to Ice Nine Kills. I listened to their album, The Silver Scream, which you can see in a poster behind me. I don't know if I'm pointing in the right direction. Um, that's the album artwork. Um, but yeah, every song on that album is based on a different horror movie, and so that's what got me wanting to seek out horror movies. And so the first one I checked out was Halloween, and I enjoyed it. I was like, okay, this is cool. But and then I eventually checked out Scream, and honestly, it had been on my watch list for several years, but it wasn't until I got into Ice Nine Kills, which I actually started to, actually I decided, I'm gonna watch it. And long story short, it ended up cementing my love of horror and being like, okay, this is a genre I want to really dig deeper into, and I just absolutely love this movie. Um, and so I guess the first thing to talk about is the opening scene of the original Scream. It's one of the most iconic opening scenes in the history of not only horror movies, but arguably in all of cinema. Obviously, Drew Barrymore playing Casey Becker. And before this movie, many of you know, before this movie came out, Drew Barrymore's face was she was marketed to be the star of the movie. She's even on the poster here. She was marketed to be the star of the movie, only for her to be, you know, Janet Lead, psychoed basically, where she got killed in the opening scene. She got killed very early on to show, hey, nobody is safe. And what's so great about this opening scene, like it's been dissected to death. Everyone's had an opinion on it, because it's a great opening scene. But I think what makes it so great is that it immediately establishes the the location, because there's an exterior shot where it's clear that Casey Becker's house is in the middle of nowhere. Like, the killer even says on the phone, it's like, hey, you're in the middle of nowhere. It's going to take forever for the cops to get here. And it also, what I really like too with the whole popcorn thing, the micro no, not the micro popcorn, but the stovetop popcorn, is that she puts it on at kind of early on in the scene, but throughout the scene, the camera cuts back to it. The movie cuts back to it every now and again, and it kind of shows, hey, that's still there. And it's always in your mind. It always kind of builds tension because you kind of see the stovetop popcorn thing getting bigger and bigger and bigger as the scene goes on until eventually at the end when it basically explodes. Um, and it catches fire and everything. And the other thing is too, the conversation between the killer and Casey Becker starts off as a very, very normal innocent conversation. Wrong number. They kind of get talking. They kind of flirt a little bit. Until the killer is eventually like, I want to know who I'm looking at. And then that's when the kind of it becomes goes from very normal to very creepy, and it kind of just amps up the tension from there. And then you have the deadly trivia game with Steve with her boyfriend Steve, and it's just such a great opening scene. It's a masterfully directed and written opening scene from Wes Craven and Kevin Williamson, respectively. And obviously at the end of the scene, Casey Baker is dead. Drew Barrymore, the biggest star of the movie, is dead, and it establishes very early on. For people back in 1996, was like nobody is safe. And so that's the opening scene. The other thing, speaking of Drew Barrymore, I want to say that this movie is perfectly cast. Obviously you have Drew Barrymore, who's like the biggest star, but you also have Nev Campbell as Sidney Prescott. She was mostly known for Party of Five at this point, but she's such a perfect cast for like a final girl type character. She's both she has a good blend of like both of being both innocent and strong at the same time. And then you have Skeet Ulrich playing Billy Loomis, the boyfriend. Um, he's great in the role as well. You have Matthew Lillard as Stu, who like that man just hams it up in the best possible way. It's so much fun to watch him like basically throughout the whole movie. He's so goofy at times. It's just so much fun. You have David Arquette as Dewey Riley, the deputy sheriff. Originally when they were originally casting this movie, the script was originally supposed to be like a typical like tough guy deputy and all that stuff, but David Arquette is such a he plays the role with yeah he wants to be a competent police officer, but at the same time he's kind of goofy. Some of these little things, like there's a shot where he puts on his sunglasses and he doesn't like quite get it. There's always these little things, and it's like he comes off as endearing, but also goofy and a little incompetent at times. But it's like he plays the role with so much character and so much heart. It's incredible. We also have Courtney Cox as Gail Weathers, the bitchy tabloid journalist. Fun fact, as many of you probably know, Courtney Cox and David Arquette met on the set of this film, and they eventually got married, and then years later got divorced. So it's pretty obvious why they have such great romantic chemistry together. And then obviously you have the voice of Ghostface himself, Roger L. Jackson. You know, to me, it's like there's always been debate of like, oh, who's like the most important cast member in history. I mean, a lot of people will say Nev Campbell because she's played Sidney Prescott and she's the lead role. But I mean, we've had a movie without Nev Campbell, you know. But it's like to me, it's like if you lose Roger L. Jackson for whatever reason, it's like I simply don't know of another voice that could play Ghostface like that. That could play a killer like that who sounds both. You'll see he sounds both evil and what's the word and calm at the same time. Like it's kind of a difficult thing to describe, but it's like once you hear that voice, like, oh yeah, that's Roger L. Jackson. He's also known for playing Mojo Jojo in the Powerpuff Girls. He's a very versatile voice actor. And now you also you have Tatum Riley, who is played by Rose McGowan. She's great. She's Sydney's best friend in this movie. She's great in the role. She plays the supportive best friend character very, very well. And I guess to kind of go back to Roger L. Jackson, it would be wrong of me to talk about this movie and not talk about Ghostface. Like he's like he is like one of the most famous icons in horror history, and he's kind of like a just a universal symbol of counterculture and alternative culture in general. In fact, I like many of people, I have a ghost face mask. I actually got this fairly recently. I got it from Spirit Halloween fairly recently. I still haven't even taken the tags or anything off, but this is the 25th anniversary edition. As many of you probably also know as well, this was not an original design made for the movie. This was originally made by I believe it was called the Peanut Eyed Ghost. I believe originally by a company called Fun World. They found it while location scouting before production for this movie, and they're like, "Wow, that mask is so cool!" But they initially thought they couldn't get the rights to it, so K and B Effects kind of had to make their own kind of version, like a 20% tweak or something like that. And you can still see that at a few shots in this movie, like during Principal Hembry's death scene is also there's like a couple of shots in the opening scene as well where you can see the original um the uh the the copy, shall we say, the 20% tweak copy. But they eventually got a deal where they can just use the mask and this mask straight up in the movie. And I mean, this mask is everybody knows this mask, everybody's seen it, and it's very effective because it's a ghost, it's got the weird looking eyes, it can be very creepy, you can see why it's a great mask. I love this thing. And I think what makes Ghostface such an interesting villain is that one, it's a persona. It's not like Michael Myers or Jason Voorhees where he's an actual, well, no instances he's an actual person. Whereas Ghostface, he's an actual persona, not a person. It's a persona. It's a costume. It's a disguise that the actual killers wear. And I'm not going to get into spoilers just yet. There will be another section later on when I talk about spoilers and I talk about the twist. But I'm assuming most of you know the twist, but I do want people to go see this movie. So I will, once I get into spoilers, I will talk about it. But yeah, and also something that makes Ghostface such a good villain, especially compared to, like, again, Michael Myers, Jason Voorhees, where they're just a human tank essentially. Ghostface, he's clumsy. He's clumsy. He falls down. He gets hit, and it makes him seem more like an actual person rather than the supernatural, force. Like, again, like those other guys, Michael Myers and Jason Voorhees, often are in some of their movies. And so, and something else I just love about this movie, this always attracted me, even before I got into horror. This really attracted me to Scream. Is that I am just a big sucker for a good whodunit mystery, and this is also a slasher movie too. So it makes it very unique because, like, not other slasher movies tend to have like a very strong mystery component to them. But this is just such a really cool thing that always attracted me to this movie. It's established early on. There's a shot in the opening scene where Ghostface is about to raise the knife. Has the knife raised. Casey Becker pulls the mask off, but the camera pulls away. It pans away as she takes the mask off of Ghostface, and it cuts back to her, and she has an expression of recognition, like, "Oh, I know that person." And then it cuts back to the knife as he pulls it down and kills her. And also, as you might expect, this is a very, like, you know, Scream is a very self-referential, very self-aware type movie. The characters know all about the rules of horror movies and all that stuff. There's the famous, rules of horror movies scene, which I'll talk about in a few minutes when I talk about spoilers. But there's a lot of, like, horror references in here. There's a reference to the Mackenzies in the opening scene, the Mackenzies from the original Halloween. Obviously they talk about characters like Michael Myers, Ghostface, and Freddy Krueger all the time, at different points in this movie. There's I guess this will segue into my only real critique with this movie, and it's kind of a big one, to be honest. Not super big, but it's definitely noticeable. The dialogue in this movie it's very dated. We'll just say that. It's a good example of this is when there's a scene in the beginning of the movie when Billy sneaks into Sydney's room. This is actually the first time where we meet both of them. happens right after the opening scene, and Billy's talking about his relationship with Sydney's comparing it with like movie ratings and stuff. It's just kind of cringe, to be honest. And I hate using that word cringe, but I don't know what other word to use. I will say the way the actors deliver the lines, and again, why I think this movie is so perfectly cast, like they do it in a way where like it can easily in the hands of lesser actors, it could easily come off as like oh cheesy and cringe. But I think they deliver the lines in a way where it doesn't come off as cheesy as it probably could be. There's another point later on in the movie where Sydney calls the killer a cretin, and it's like I've literally never heard anyone in real life say that word personally. Use the word cretin. And I know this kind of sounds nitpicky, but I mean, there's dialogue like this kind of points throughout the movie. There's another point where Sydney tells in a later scene where Sydney asks Billy if his brain is leaking, which is a bit odd. And then there's another scene a bit later on after that where um Sydney and Billy are having like a very personal conversation, and he starts and Billy just goes, "Oh, it's like Silence of the Lambs," and I was like, okay, it's like, can you not talk in movie references? This isn't just goes for Billy, but it's like, can you not talk about him? Can you go 5 minutes without? It's like the only way you can communicate in movie references. It gets a little weird at times, but at the same time, it is kind of nitpicky. It is kind of nitpicky, so it's like it's not that big of a deal, but it is there, and the dialogue definitely feels very 90s and very just kind of eh, as kind of part of that. Okay, so here's where I am going to go into the spoiler section. So if you have not seen the original Scream, I assume most of you have, but I know some of you probably haven't. Um, go watch it. Go watch it. Come back later. Come back after you watch it. Hear my take on the final scene, on the third act. So the twist of this movie is like the main twist of this movie is that there are two killers, Billy and Stu. You know, when I first saw this movie back in 2020, for whatever I was like such a noob at horror when it comes to horror that I didn't even like really think that there would be two killers. But it's like okay, because you never see Ghostface in one location in more than one location at the same time. So your brain never really thinks, oh, there might be two killers. It's not until the end where it's like, oh, there are two killers, and it's like the fact that there are two killers, it can like and the fact that you only ever see Ghostface in one location at one time, it makes it so that it's really, really hard to guess who the killer is. And, Billy ends up being one of the killers. And it's one of those, like, Billy is such a big well, not red herring, but it's like he is presented as the prime suspect earlier on in the movie. And it's like it's kind of one of those things where it's like he is such an obvious suspect that you start second guessing yourself. And it's like there's no way he can be the killer. It's too obvious. And then when he is revealed to be the killer, it's like you're kind of shocked because you're like it's just so obvious that it couldn't be him. But it is him, and it's surprising. And Stu being the killer is also another really cool twist. And again, going back to Matthew Lillard here, the way he in the final scene with Sydney and Billy, the way he just hams it up so much is so much fun. And it's like he has so many classic lines of dialogue, like the classic "Oh, you hit me with the phone, dick," or the on the it's kind of in the same part where he's talking on the phone to Sydney, who's in the closet, hiding from Billy, who's just going nuts at this point. And, and Sydney asks him, he's like, "Hey, I've called the police. Billy has a motive. What's your motive? What are you going to tell him?" And he just goes, "My mom and dad are going to be so mad at me, like he's like his parents are going to take away his Xbox over fucking murdering people." It's so great. It's so hammy and cheesy, but it's just like the way he delivered it is just so amazing and so much fun. He has like he's a teenager who's a murderer, but he has like the mentality of a little kid. It's great. Um, and yeah, the final scene that takes place in that house is such a cool scene. The other, plot point, Billy's motive for is kind of talked about throughout the movie how Sydney's mother 1 year ago, prior to the events of this movie, was raped and murdered. They believe it was by a guy named Cotton Weary, who's played by Liev Schreiber, and apparently he was sentenced to death, all based on Sydney's testimony that she gave. And so, Gail Weathers, she's trying to, you know, she's following Sydney around because she's a tabloid journalist. That's what she does, and she thinks that she pegged the wrong guy. Well, finds out later on that she did in fact peg the wrong guy because the guy who murdered Sydney's mother was actually Billy and Stu a year before, and Billy's motive was because um his Sydney's mother was having an affair with Billy's father, and they broke up their family and stuff. I thought that was a pretty good motive. I like that motive. Not like the motive. You guys get what I mean. And so, the twist works because it's real. There's two killers, which was very unique for the time for 1996. And the third act is just so much fun to see Sydney, just take it to Billy and Stu. She kind of dons the Ghostface persona herself against Billy, which is really, for a minute, against Billy, which is really cool. And the movie ends with Dewey surviving. It ends with Gail surviving. Obviously, Sydney surviving. Randy surviving. How do I? Oh my god! I completely neglected to talk about Randy. I don't know how I did that. Randy, who's played by Jamie Kennedy, he's like the movie geek, right? For a movie like this, you gotta have like a movie geek, and he has like almost an encyclopedic knowledge of horror movies. Like he's talking about, Jamie Lee. He does that one. Jamie Lee Curtis. He has that one scene where he gives the rules of the horror movies. You can never have sex, you can never drink or do drugs, or you can never say "I'll be right back." And what's cool about this movie is that it brings those tropes into its conversation, but yet it also subverts them at the same time. Sydney has sex with Billy, she survives. Randy drinks and survives. Stu says, "I'll be right back," in that scene at the end of that rules scene, and it turns out he's the killer. So it's like it subverts the horror tropes and cliches in a very self-referential sort of way, which I think is really cool and really unique. And it's one of the things that really helped Scream stand out at a time, when horror was just on the downturn. It was all a bunch of endless stream of Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street and Halloween sequels, at the time, and the horror was thought to be in a really, really bad place. Hell, even Wes Craven's career was on was kind of on the downslope at this point. He couldn't recapture the success of A Nightmare on Elm Street, and he made this movie, and it ended up turning his career around. He kind of had a bit of a late career renaissance because of this movie, and so, um, yeah, I kind of said what I wanted to say about Stream. I absolutely love it. I think it's a phenomenal movie. It's my personal favorite slasher movie. Like it is so good. It definitely deserves all the praise it gets. So, if you have not seen this movie, definitely please go out and see it. Not go out and see it, but I mean, check it out. Definitely buy the 4K that I have here. This is a really good 4K transfer. This was made, as you can see by the sticker here, made for the 25th anniversary a couple years back. This came out actually just before Scream 2022 or Scream 5, whatever you want to call it. And so definitely try to get the 4K if you can, if it's a 4K Blu-ray if you can. It's a really awesome transfer, and the movie looks great, especially if you have a 4K TV, which I'm sure most people by now probably do. So, anyways, guys, that is it for this video. Please like, comment, and subscribe to Movie Mortis, where movie madness lives. And I will see you guys in the next review. Take care, everybody.